coverage now and bring up the team that are going to zero in on our focus tonight. And that focus is what everybody is talking about, the coronavirus. Our team will be covering that case from all angles. But first, here now is a map behind me of all the countries affected by the pandemic. This is the global perspective. These red dots indicate that these are the countries that are affected by the coronavirus. Now, the global coronavirus cases have passed 200,000. The global death toll from the virus pandemic hit 8,000 today. Now, of these deaths, 3,422 are in Europe, where the pandemic is spreading most rapidly, and that is here. And that is why on this map you see the most dots, red dots, and also some of the biggest as well. We move to Asia, where 3,384 deaths have been reported. And here you go again, the biggest circle there. And remember that Asia is where the outbreak actually originated. Now, in the South Asian subcontinent, though, numbers are still below 500, but there are fears that a spike could overwhelm health systems there. Let's now move you to the United States, and here we are over here, a fairly large dot. Now, the coronavirus has hit all 50 US states as deaths rise there. And also the US-Canada border is set to close amid the virus crisis. All right, now let's bring you closer to home. And here we go, Africa. The latest here in Kenya, as we mentioned earlier, 7 cases have been reported. South Africa still have cases. There are a few countries that have no red dots. That includes Chad, Niger and Mali, as well as a few other countries. But really at this point, eventually they say that the majority, if not all countries across the globe will be affected. So that's a global outlook, but let's narrow down and bring us closer to home now. Leila Mohammed kicks off by taking a closer look at what exactly COVID-19 is.
Well, Smriti, this virus that has hit and become a pandemic first was reported in China's Wuhan city in December 2019. To date, it has infected 200,000 people, killed about 8,000, with 82,000 reported recoveries across the globe. So what exactly is this COVID-19? I spoke to an epidemiologist and a virologist to understand this epidemic that has literally and virtually brought the world to a standstill.
Coronaviruses as a group are a group of viruses which affect both humans and animals, and they largely cause respiratory illness.
One of the major differences is that this outbreak is caused by a new virus that has not affected human beings before.
In humans, the coronaviruses which are now known to affect humans are 6. 4 of them cause mild respiratory illness, what we refer to as common cold, but there are 3 which have been associated with large epidemics.
This particular one is totally new, having being suspected of jumped species from animals to man, and for that reason no one has prior immunity to it, because no one.
But by far the large majority of persons do not get severe disease, so it's not, as some people might think, it's a death sentence.
As at March 18th, 2020, reports show that the Chinese city of Wuhan is gradually getting back to near normal life after months of a total lockdown caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Scientists say the doctors had warned of a SARS-like viral disease that they believe stemmed from something sold at the wet market. After weeks of investigation, it was discovered that it originated in a bat and somehow hopped to another animal, probably a pangolin, which then passed it to humans.
The current drive of this outbreak is not animal. It's not by animals, it's by man to man or between human beings. It's that I get infected and I infect other humans.
Scientists have dispelled rumors and myths that hotter temperatures and the skin color of an individual will play a key role in boosting his or her immunity against COVID-19. But what they are now saying is that there is a race against time to find a cure to ensure that COVID-19, that was called a pandemic just last week, can be cured.
That is because even for other viruses, although we've not studied the effect of temperature on this current COVID-19 virus, it belongs to a family of viruses, about 40 other viruses called coronaviruses. And we've seen that they can survive for hours, even in very hot temperatures on the surface.
Doctors have given it symptoms which they note can sometimes be similar to those of the common cold or flu.
The disease will present largely with a dry cough and fever, and also people will feel tiredness. And in some instances, it can be severe.
So no one is resistant to this infection. Anyone can be infected. The only difference, and this brings me to your third part of your question, as to what is the issue with people above 70, is the fact that people who are older are at a greater risk of severe illness.
And those who have underlying conditions like diabetes.
Whilst a cure and vaccine is being sought, scientists say that the best strategies for preventing transmission of this disease include overall good personal hygiene.
The worry of the health system is that although we're talking about a small proportion who get severe disease and require hospitalization, if that number is so great in a short time, then it can overwhelm the health system.
Those who may already have the infection have been advised to wear a surgical mask in public. Social distancing measures are also recommended to prevent transmission.
Now, one of the many ways to reduce the number of infections anywhere in this world at this moment is by ensuring that you sustain or maintain high levels of hygiene by sanitizing and cleaning your hands. But in many parts of this country, there is one particular commodity that Kenyans so badly need, and they have lack of it at the moment, and this is water. Bridget Ngana dug deeper into this issue and the lack of water and the dangers it poses to the health of many Kenyans at risk. Bridget.
Washing your hands with soap and running water has been touted as the first line of defense against the coronavirus. However, this may be a tall order for over 20 million Kenyans who lack access to clean, safe water. Take a look. At this watering point at Mwisho Walami Elementaita, the batches of jerrycans waiting to be filled is perhaps the clearest indicator of the magnitude of the problem, that is, accessing clean water. Jane Chirono is amongst those who have to carry out this daily routine. It is the only way she can ensure that her family has enough water for domestic consumption in this water-scarce area of Nakuru town.
So unajua watu wana depend kwa matangi na sana sana hapa. So shida ya maji sana hapa, mnaweza pewa mtungi 5.
She, alongside other residents here, are well aware of the threat of the coronavirus infection. They also know that hand washing with soap is the first line of their defense against this virus. But they say they can't strictly carry out this preventive measure since water here is a rare commodity.
Unaona tukaa sisi hapa sasa vile tuko na shida ya maji, hatuwezi tukasema tutaosha sana. Kwa sababu kuja hapa umepewa mitungi ngapi? 5 na hujui kama kesho utapata. Sasa unaona utafuata hiyo sheria yenye serikali inasema uoshe mkono kila saa, huwezi.
Kuna watu wenye hawana matangi wanategemea hii maji. Kama sasa hiyo imenyesha ndio sasa saizi wanatumia saizi. Ikiisha hawana pa kwenda. Ni hapa tu wanakimbilia.
The Water Services Regulatory Board indicates that Kenya has a 55% safe water coverage, which translates to 1 million connections. But for more than half of the Kenyan population, this is just a pipe dream reserved for a few.
Ngine mahali mtu wako na tangi yake ukienda hata yeye amemaliza maji na ukijua ni kununua tunanunua kwa mtungi shilingi 50.
While Nakuru County has stepped up its readiness to deal with coronavirus cases at the Nakuru Level 5 hospital, little can be said of the county's efforts at creating public health awareness on hand washing or the provisions to ensure residents without access to water get the commodity. But the governor says plans are underway.
We are working on a plan to supplement water through tanking. We have vehicles that can take tanks into specific designated areas. But it is also true we cannot reach everybody. But we will also do our part We have also encouraged other institutions, including churches, schools, and any other public entity. The least you can do to the people around you is just to provide a place to wash their hands. We also urge for better conservation of water more than any other time before, because if this condition was to be there for another 6 months, then you can be sure that we'll be in serious trouble if we don't manage our water resource.
Despite government efforts to create awareness on the coronavirus, the battle might still not be won without water. More and more livelihoods continue to feel the heat of this global pandemic. Kevin Mutai takes a look at what measures the government has put in place and how they are affecting the common wananchi.
Bridget's almost 80% of Kenyans earn a living from the informal sector, much of which has been greatly affected by some of the necessary measures put in place to flatten the tide of the coronavirus infections in Kenya. Here in Mombasa, the tourism, hospitality and entertainment industry, which employs tens of thousands, if not more, is feeling the pinch. Take a look. On any other day, the Jomo Kenyatta Public Beach in Mombasa would be teeming with tourists, both local and foreign. But now the beach is clearly a ghost town. The coming of coronavirus into Kenya has cleared the beaches of human traffic, and those who depend on this industry are feeling the pinch.
Kila siku na hapa ndio unakunywa pita riski yako, mtoto anakula. Sasa ameregeshwa nyumbani, kelele nyumbani, watoto wataka chakula. Asubuhi umetoka na rudi nyumbani bila chochote. Watakula kula wapi?
Businesses that are tied to the tourism industry here at the beach, food kiosks, entertainment joints, amongst others, have been closed indefinitely, with owners staring at grim days ahead because they cannot find customers. Boat operators are also feeling the pinch, sending shockwaves to the entire tourism industry, which is now struggling to stay afloat. Police are making regular patrols to ensure that the ban is adhered to.
Is a global problem. Waelewe tu kwamba tunafanya hivi ili kuzuia maambukizi, kuzuia madhara peke yake.
The situation is also likely to spike the rate of unemployment because hundreds of youth depend on the beach for their livelihoods. They, like others across the country, are keeping their fingers crossed that the government interventions will work and the situation will stabilize and return to normal sooner rather than later.
Wacha watu wafanye kazi, lakini iliyoko kuna utaratibu wetu wa kazi ambapo yani sisi wenyewe tunaweza kukaa tukajiorganize na tukajipanga kikazi.
The hotel and hospitality industry has also taken a hit, with bookings plummeting, and the resultant impact is only beginning to be felt on those employed in the sector.
Tulikuwa tumejaa kabisa. In fact, wakati wa Easter tarehe 10 mpaka 12 tulikuwa overbooked. Between jana na leo zote room isipokuwa 2 zimekanseliwa na zingine zimepostponiwa.
The outbreak has presented a situation few people, if any, had anticipated. So what happens when you can't access your place of work? How do you ensure business continuity during a lockdown? So far, technology hasn't answered all of the questions. But as my colleague Victor Kiprop found out, is the only answer we have for now.
Hi, this is my Agile office for the day. Come in and have a look.
When Justin Apsi, Unilever East Africa's managing director, welcomed us to his house in Karen, Nairobi, the reality of how much the coronavirus outbreak has interrupted the running of day-to-day business operations was laid bare. He is in charge of a team of 1,000 employees in 5 East African countries, all of whom he now has to lead from this small space in his house.
I move around a hell of a lot, but the thing is I'd be interacting with teams, walking and sitting in meetings, having discussions with people. We used a lot of agile technology previously because I look after the whole of East Africa and therefore we engage with many other countries a lot of the time. But now it's extreme.
But through a voice call there, a video call here, several SMSs, tens of WhatsApp chats and dozens of emails, Apsi says technology is turning out to be the silver bullet in ensuring business continuity in these extraordinary times.
We're going to use the Microsoft Teams platform, and we encourage everyone to get some sort of platform. We believe it's the right one to use because we can share documents, we can chat within that space, we can be very collaborative in how we work. We can move a lot of our shared network and while we worked into that space very, very quickly. But we're using a number of other platforms at the same time. WhatsApp's working, Skype for Business we've used at different times. I think the key for me is to embrace as much technology as possible.
At the Nation Media Group's headquarters, Nation Center, Nairobi, hundreds of employees from different departments have been allowed remote access to the company's systems, even as more staff embrace video conferencing and online information sharing systems, joining tens of companies that are already using different technologies to enable remote working, as advised by the government.
Government offices, businesses, and companies are encouraged to allow employees to work from home, with the exception of employees working in critical or essential services.
Across the world, the situation is similar as more companies ask employees to work from home amid lockdowns and restriction of movements that have turned even major cities such as the Italian capital of Rome into ghost towns. Over the weekend, Microsoft's chat-based collaboration and information sharing tool Microsoft Teams crashed after reporting more than 500% increase in usage.
We have suspended learning in all our education institutions with immediate effect.
The outbreak has also brought physical learning activities across the world to a halt, forcing more institutions to embrace digital learning. In Kenya, virtual learning has already taken off in some schools, both local and international, with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development KICD in the process of scaling up online and electronic delivery of lessons for learners, up to 8 hours every day through radio and television. Longhorn Publishers has also availed their online learning platform to learners from grade 1 to Form 4 at no cost in order to keep them busy during this period. In the meantime, challenges associated with the shift to remote working, including new or increased cost of home internet, as well as the risk of leak of sensitive information and data theft, remain.
But as children continue with their learning through digital platforms, it is the extracurricular activities such as playtime where the real danger lies for the young ones, especially when no one is watching. My colleague Lois Wangoi from Eldoret has more on that.
Kevin, the government has ordered the closure of schools and institutions of higher learning as a measure of containing the coronavirus against our children. But how safe are our children back home? Are they observing the measures such as hand washing and maintaining social distances? Here is my report. The closure of schools and learning institutions across the country is one of the mitigation measures against the unhindered spread of coronavirus. While the aim of the closure was to keep the children safe from infection by encouraging social distancing, in most areas the opposite is happening. In Eldoret's Langas settlement, one would be mistaken for thinking that this was a normal school holiday.
Tuwezi shinda kwa mlango juu sisi wenyewe ndio tunatafuta, lazima tuende tutafute ndio watoto wapate school fees, wavae, wakule.
The children excitedly mingle with each other. Adults look on unperturbed. The sanitation protocols like availing clean water and soap for hand washing are not in place. The guardians say having the children home was counterproductive for them.
Mimi niko huku, mtoto unasikia amerandaranda amefika huku, wananiambia mtoto amepitia huku hivyo. Sasa hapa wajanisaidia. Afadhali shule angekaa huko ananawa narudi kwa darasa.
According to the government, the children and students had been advised on coronavirus safety measures, including frequent hand washing and social distancing. In some parts of this town, that is being adhered to almost to the letter. Children are keeping indoors.
Indoor activities like indoor games, chess, computer games would go a long way to avoid crowding and contact.
It will be a loss for us as a country and a government to have released children from schools. Then you find groups of 20 children in the villages and in estates loitering around.
is not lost though. Some parents have taken up the gospel of coronavirus safety and are spreading it with the hope that the well-intentioned closure of schools does not end up further endangering them. Social distancing, proper hygiene, isolation and quarantine are some of the key public safety measures put in place by the government. But some of these changes require a behavioral change, as Eunice Omolo has been finding out. Eunice?
Yes, Lois, across the country, Kenyans are adopting a change of behavior in concerted efforts to contain the further spread of the virus. Take a look at how individuals, communities, and institutions are joining in the campaign. It's a step-by-step demonstration of hand-washing by Karen Ninga, who has taken upon herself to teach her neighbors, their children, and the community in Kibra on the importance of hand washing during this time when the country is fighting the global pandemic.
She has taught us how to thoroughly wash our hands. It's not just about dipping your hands in water. And the goodness is she has done it so thoroughly to the extent that our children have learned how to do it.
In an area where running water is a challenge, she devised her ways to ensure that her family and community are protected.
Where do I get running water from? And we don't have water here. If any we have, maybe it is sometimes controlled and you don't have it at all. So I decided to do something for myself, for my family, so that we protect ourselves from getting this disease.
Homesteads and households have to embrace behavioral change like hand washing to ensure that the virus is kept at bay. Meanwhile, as universities have up to Friday this week, at Mount Kenya University, step-by-step measures have been put in place to continue ensuring that the students and the staff continue to observe mitigation measures even as the students leave the school in batches.
For the corridors, entry to any reception, there are bottles of sanitizer with a notice that sanitize your hand so that in case you don't spread. Improving the hygiene in general. All our staff that work in the lab, we have also had a session with them, ensuring the benches, the door handles are cleaned on a daily basis.
Lifts have been grounded since the first case of COVID-19 was announced in the country as a measure to ensure the 1 meter distance between the students and staff is observed. People are encouraged to use the stairs. Hand washing at point of entry is taken with the seriousness it deserves. Sanitizers have also been provided for the community, and due to the scarcity of the now much needed item, the varsity under the medical school prepares the sanitizers that are strictly not for sale but for the use by the members of staff and students. Training is also offered on the correct use of the sanitizer.
Rub them. Start with the back of your hand, both sides, and then come.
By Friday this week, all students will be outside the school premises and they have been urged to stay safe by exercising social distancing. The other public safety measure put in place by government is isolation and self-quarantine for those who might have traveled into the country or come into contact with potential victims. This individual explains the rules of isolation and challenges therein.
I was in New York, and on the first day that they announced the first case in New York, I stayed there for a day, and then I moved to San Francisco. And while I was there 2 days later, they announced again that there was a case. I didn't come into contact with any cases myself, or did not. None of the, even in the neighborhoods where I was perfectly fine. But even then I was like, I have understood that the incubation period is about a week or more. And so do I come home and eat lipukas while I'm home? I have small children. I have an 8-year-old and I have an 8-month-old. Does it make sense for me to come and be, in the same space as them? My mother is an older person. I had learned that older people are at even higher risk. But even more importantly is that she has a condition, she has an underlying condition, which means if I were to expose her, then she's even more at risk. I got a flat somewhere that is a bit secluded, that does not have lots of people.
We were like, okay, we need to know if he's fine. If he's not, we deal it with urgency and at the same time not compromising us. Of course, it was scary, especially on the day they reported the first case and he was still in isolation. And I remember I called him and I said, "Are you okay? Do you feel anything funny?" Yeah, it was scary, but it was necessary.
So I stayed in self-isolation, and my last day was Sunday. And on Sunday I came home. And in the evening the president made an announcement that said, you know, everybody stay at home if possible. I'm concerned in hearing that there are young people who are still going out, who are still going into bars and places like that. And I really would encourage them, this is not the time. Nobody in that pub is going to miss you if you are dead. I think people need to understand. It can get so bad that the medical facilities can't handle it. Italy has the best medical facility in Europe, and right now they're chock-a-block. The system just can't take it. Accept that short-term inconvenience of a prison because of the fact that in the long run, all of us are going to be in a much better place.